Hey, MBA hopefuls, we're on the air with MBA Waves, your weekly broadcast talking all things business and education. Today we have on the show Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, on this 125th episode of the show. Today we're going to learn about what's amazing about Berkeley Haas to land on the number 7 spot in the FT rankings this year. We're going to get to know about Berkeley's focus on sustainability and just what Berkeley Haas and MBA Haas can do for your career. Please don't forget to like this episode if you enjoyed, and click subscribe to stay on top of tons of free tips and to get up close and personal with some of the world's top MBA programs. I am your host today, Eric Lucrezia, joined by my co-hosts Bara Sapir and Krithika Srinivasan, and we have 3 guests joining us today from Berkeley. Eric Askins, who's the Executive Director of MBA Recruitment, Hilary Going, an MBA alumna, class of 2023, currently a Senior Manager of Strategic Partnerships at Climeworks Carbon Removal, and finally, Katherine Baird from the Office of Sustainability and Climate Change. Welcome, everyone. How are we doing today?
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks.
Glad to have you guys here. So tell us, maybe I'll ask Eric to start us off, if you don't mind. Eric, what's new and exciting at Haas these days?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to be here first, and thanks so much for having us. There's lots to talk about with Haas. There's so many different things that we have going on. But I think I want to focus on a couple of key pieces, if that's okay with you all. That's why we have such amazing folks from Haas who've joined us here on this session. So what's new at Haas? What's new is that we're always innovating. We're always changing. We're always focusing on what's next. We are an institution that has, at least as part of our focus, preparing the entire world for what is, in a sense, a transition economy. And I'd love to actually invite some of the other guests to talk a little bit about what's going on here. Kat, I know that we've got a lot going on in sustainability. Maybe she might lead that off for you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric, to both the Erics, actually. My name is Kat Baird, and I am the Director of Sustainability and Climate Change here at the Haas School of Business. And what Eric Askin mentioned is correct. You know, what we see here at Haas is that what we term climate literacy, a deep understanding of sustainability, you know, these are the key leadership, some of the key leadership skills that anyone needs to run a company, to be successful in 2023, soon 2024. And so we are really infusing everything here at Haas, from our core curriculum through to all of our incredible electives and extracurricular opportunities, with a lot of that mentality, that content, that support. And so I'm excited to talk a lot more about that today here with you all. And Hilary, as someone who's just done our MBA program, maybe you can also kick off a little bit about your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So as Eric alluded to, I actually just graduated in May of this year, which somehow feels like years ago. And thank you. Very sad to be off campus now. Yeah, I mean, Haas was absolutely integral to me finding a career in climate and in climate tech. For those of you who don't know Climeworks, we're a global leader in carbon dioxide removal using direct air capture technology. If you're not in climate, that probably sounds like a lot of jargon. Essentially, we're using these large machines to pull CO2 out of the air and inject it permanently into the earth. And, you know, I wasn't coming to Haas in particular for sustainability. But while on campus, focus on having a more positive social impact through my career kind of led me there. And that was directly because I think of, as Kat alluded to, the infusion of these topics into all of the core classes, as well as just kind of general access to some of the best resources and greatest minds in energy and in climate, both at Berkeley as a university, but also kind of in the Bay Area, where there's this like microcosm of innovation in climate and in carbon removal.
Before Krithika asks the next question, I just have to comment. I mean, that's super interesting. It's very complex, and I'm wondering, is Climeworks a unique company doing this kind of thing? You talk about injecting into the earth, or is this done in multiple places around the world? It's like,
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been around for about 14 years, which is a very long time for a climate tech company, as you can imagine. But this space is so nascent, and there's a lot happening in it right now. I mean, there are, articles every single day in some of the leading kind of news sources. An interesting kind of aspect of how this market is developing is the amount of funding that's going into it right now from the U.S. government. So with the IRA and Biden created this part of it that is focused on building infrastructure, specifically direct air capture infrastructure in the U.S. And funny kind of mention, actually, I was on a panel with the individual who manages this program as part of the Department of Energy, Noah Deitch, who is actually also a Haas alum. I think he was class of 2015, but after leaving Haas started a carbon removal NGO, and now is leading this program. So lots of Haassies kind of all around this space, and that makes it really fun to be a part of.
Haassies, love it.
Wow, I love this. Climate literacy, sustainability. Haas was one of the first schools to walk the talk, actually. And when we had this privilege of actually visiting Haas, I think 5 years ago or 6 years ago, as part of AGAC, we had this beautiful opportunity to see how sustainability was interwoven in everything at the school. So, Hilary, I would love to understand more about what are some of the standout, unique features of the Haas MBA that people should know about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, as you were talking, I was thinking about, we have a pretty new, Eric and Kat jump in. I think it was like 2021 or 2020 that Chew opened, which I think there's something about it that's like the most sustainable buildings. Haas is certainly investing.
I could jump in real quick for you, Hilary. I'm sorry. I'd say just to put a little underpinning on that piece, and then I'm happy to pass it back to you. So Chew Hall, which opened in 2018, at the end of 2018, was and still is, I believe, the only Platinum LEED certified educational building on a business school campus, and that is intentional. One of the things that we did is we understood the need to sometimes bypass bureaucracy in order to move forward. When moving forward is what was needed. So it was entirely donor funded with that specific intent to be the greenest building on an MBA campus. And Krithika, I think when you all were here, we had just opened it, or we were just about to open it. But certainly, it's an amazing space to be in, and a beautiful experience. And Hilary, I think you were to speak more to that. So apologies for cutting you off.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just, it alludes to kind of the various facets of the Haas experience and of Berkeley's investment in kind of sustainability. It's also a beautiful building, and I loved taking classes there and using the meeting rooms to do work with my peers. But I think to zoom out on sustainability a little bit, Haas as an institution, I think is pretty well known for a focus on social impact. And that was really what brought me to Haas, was wanting to be amongst people who, despite coming from very different backgrounds, all kind of had this underlying moral compass and passion for making a positive impact in the world. The defining leadership principles at Haas, I think, are a great kind of indication of that. I think that they are student always, confidence without attitude, go beyond yourself and question the status quo. And, I think a lot of times these can be canned, kind of off the shelf things to try and market to folks to, come to this institution. And that's just not the case at Haas. I think the more I had conversations and exploring different programs, the more I realized that is truly kind of fundamental to everybody that comes to Haas. And hats off to the admissions department. You guys do a really good job of truly vetting for that. But I think that kind of transcends the entire experience of the conversations that we're having in the classroom, are truly everybody's contributing. And as Kat kind of alluded to, like, we're really infusing these topics, not just sustainability, but, social justice and racial justice and ethical business. And can there truly be a triple bottom line into every conversation, whether we're in, corporate finance, accounting, or, a class on climate change and business strategy. So I think that authenticity and how integral social impact is to the experience at Haas was really, huge in my experience there.
I'm curious. I've got questions to ask about the sustainability and how it fits in. But Hilary, I have the spotlight on you for just a moment. Where did you come from that you got to Haas? Because you said that you weren't necessarily thinking about climate change, but you were talking about the progressive. I mean, we're in the Bay Area, so like you have all these microcosms, right? That just, it's all around us. But I'm curious, what were your plans when you did enter, or when you were applying to Haas and then winding up at Climeworks, and how did the school support you in that?
Yeah, absolutely. As a queer person, as somebody who's lived in the Bay Area for a while, it kind of all started percolating in 2020. We were all obviously spending a lot of time at home. I personally was doing a lot of introspection about how I could be having a more positive impact on a greater scale, not just doing kind of volunteer work or community engagement outside of my role, which at the time was kind of in enterprise relationship management and sales for a legal services company in the Bay Area. I just wanted to kind of be doing more. And that was kind of coming up a lot because of, everything that was happening with the racial justice movement and so many more things, climate as well. I spoke to a friend who had just finished up their MBA, and they told me about an organization called the Consortium. So I came to Haas as a consortium fellow. The mission of that organization is to promote access to and equity in business and business schools for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Native Americans. And so that was a huge driver in getting me into kind of the mindset that business school might be a good opportunity. I think you don't necessarily think finding a career in impact through business school. Like, I think at the time I thought, oh, that's kind of a dichotomy. But hearing what this person had to say about Haas and the consortium led me to believe that, this 2-year program could be the best place for me to explore where that impact would be kind of most realized and most profound. I think thinking about climate, it's such a dire kind of issue, and so much, I think, of what's going to develop over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of how much we're actually able to slow down this train is going to be done in business and for-profit business. And so I think coming to Haas and realizing that aspect, and also understanding that climate change is impacting the already most marginalized communities, kind of helped me build this thesis that this is where I need to be right now.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Marsha McLuhan's message, like the medium is the message, right? It's like the school, it sounds like, was the catalyst, and it provided that. That's super interesting. Maybe some of you, maybe Kat or Eric, you can talk about how is sustainability actually steeped, like get into the weeds a little bit more of how it's steeped into the Haas curriculum, and even how it then translates professionally.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off a little bit on that. I think what's really interesting, even just listening to you, Hilary, and reflecting, I've been here at Haas now for almost 5 years. And what I really loved when I first came to work at Haas was the sort of energy, as we've kind of talked about, the culture, the energy that you get both from being here at the Haas School of Business, also being on the wider UC Berkeley campus. We're very connected to a huge amount of initiatives and opportunities from schools, across the campus. So that's something that the students who come here to business school can really take advantage of. And then, as you mentioned, Bara, we also exist within a microcosm of the Bay Area with this incredible kind of intersection of innovation and this huge awareness around climate, around sustainability. And so I think that creates a really incredible, already just starting point for a lot of what we're doing. And I think the shift that I have really seen in the last 5 years here at Haas is, with our dean's leadership, Dean Ann Harrison, sustainability has really come kind of front and center as a leadership priority. So what we were seeing prior to this was an incredible amount of activity that was happening across the business school campus. I mean, we've had the Sustainable Investment Fund, which was the first MBA managed, sustainably invested student-run fund in the country. That's been around since 2008. So Haas has been at the vanguard for a lot of this. We've had a program called Clean Tech to Market for many years that's paired our MBA students with clean energy startups. So, a great program to have now, particularly as Hilary mentioned, with the new IRA funding that's coming down from the federal government. But this is something that we've been doing here at Haas for years. And so it is a big part of our DNA and a part of our culture. But I think what we're seeing today here at Haas, and this is what makes it really unique in my perspective, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited to work here and work with our incredible students and faculty, is that it is truly being embedded. So, one of the places that I like to start is if you come to Haas, through our core curriculum, you will already get an understanding of how much sustainability impacts finance, accounting, management of organizations, all of these classes that every MBA takes. Our goal is that every MBA student that comes to Haas leaves with a literacy, what we call climate literacy, so that they are prepared to tackle this issue as a leader going forward in their career, no matter where they end up, what industry, what focus area they have. But then what we really have is, beyond the core curriculum, we have an incredible spread of opportunities in different subject areas. So here at Haas, if you're passionate about energy, we have a ton of opportunities. As I mentioned, the Clean Tech to Market program, we have the highest number of professors focused on energy and economics in the country. We have a nationally renowned energy institute. So we have a huge number of ways that you as a student can really plug in, get some incredible connections, sort of leapfrog your career in this growing renewable and clean energy space. Equally, if you're interested in finance, we have an incredible sustainable and impact finance initiative. We have 3 student-run investment funds, kind of looking at all different levels of market investments, public markets, early seed stage funding, and a newly launched climate solutions fund that is, again, the first in the country opportunity for MBA students to actually undertake this new field of climate investing, looking at different financial vehicles that we need to really grow a lot of the solutions that the world is in desperate need of right now. So that's an incredible opportunity. We have programming in food and agriculture. We have corporate social responsibility, real estate. So really, if you come to Haas like Hilary, and maybe this isn't your primary focus, but while you're here, you get really passionate and excited about this topic area, you're not pigeonholed into one area. It's really across a whole broad spectrum of all the ways that sustainability and climate touch on our economy, and the economic transition that Eric mentioned. So yeah, I could keep talking for ages, but I'll sort of step back and Eric, I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to add to that.
Well, I want to honor Bara's framing of the question, which was our investments. How are we growing? How are we building? Because I do think it's important to note that there's a lot of schools talking about this, but as was noted earlier, we've been walking the talk for a good long time. And I know you mentioned the climate fund, but that's a fundraised fund that was a $4.5 million investment this year. We've gone out to our donors. We've come directly out of the university's operating dollars to decide where to invest our efforts, where to build the spaces for students to explore all of this. And it happens in waves and stages, as Kat mentioned. If you come here and your focus area is consulting, is finance, is tech, is entrepreneurship that isn't in the sustainability space, you're going to get an understanding. You'll get your frameworks. If you want to go a little bit deeper, beyond just the coursework that you could take, there's also sustainability certificates, an opportunity to actually get something that you have and can hold on to and share with everyone else their level of understanding. And if we want to go even further, I'll just mention that we have a forthcoming joint degree with our College of Natural Resources, which will be a green MBA, to really highlight that you can, at any point in time, touch this in a number of different ways, all the way up to the most significant investment, which is building out an entire degree for students who want to combine these two skill sets.
It's all
You know,
really
it's kind of what
exciting.
we would expect from Berkeley, this intersection of, you know, innovation, education, tech, openness, all of this stuff. It's really making sense, and kind of what I anticipated getting into today with you guys, and it's great to hear that. Coming back to the MBA specifically, a lot of us, you know, working in the MBA world, we talk very often about finding the right fit, which is obviously something Hilary did. And you know, with all the fantastic MBA programs out there, and each of them having their own unique flavor, delivering the nuts and bolts of an MBA, a lot of it comes down to culture. So could you get into a little bit more about the culture at Haas?
Hilary, do you want to pick this up? I'm happy to.
Yeah, I was going to say, Eric, do you want me to jump in here? Yeah.
Yeah, please do, but I'm happy to add.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so maybe where I can start here is, you know, I mentioned the defining leadership principles, and I think that's huge. When I started to get a sense for the culture at Haas was, you know, when I was in the process of exploring programs and applying. Haas does a great job of making current students very available for that process. And so I was lucky enough to make connections with a number of folks and have, you know, very frank and candid conversations about the experience that they were having. You know, I remember attending a panel that some students within the Q at Haas organization, which is the LGBTQ plus campus Haas group, you know, just speaking about their backgrounds and coming to campus and like what socializing looked like. And I just remember kind of having this aha moment sitting on Zoom, like in my house in the middle of the pandemic, of just feeling like, oh, these are my people. And you know, that could look so many different ways, but I think it was consistently validated throughout my experience of, you know, coming into the classroom and feeling like everybody was approaching, you know, the dialogue and conversation with respect and humility and, you know, a healthy dose of humor and lightness. And I think that kind of speaks to the culture at Haas. I mean, it's a relatively small business school. When you look at some of the other programs, I think my class was like 290. And I think that really enables you to kind of make a lot of really meaningful, kind of substantial connections. But I think I was continually surprised throughout the program that, like, regardless of where people were coming from geographically or, you know, industry wise, there was this curiosity, this kind of general humility and interest in, as I said earlier, leaving that positive impact, leaving that positive mark on the world. And so I think that really speaks to the culture. Eric, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm sorry, did I talk over you? I apologize. Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric. I was going to add in a little bit of a comment. Yeah.
Sorry.
Eric, you go.
I apologize for talking over you, Kat. Yeah. In terms of what Hilary shared, one of the things that, well, it's always been part of my talking points, and Hilary brought it up in such an organic way. But the size of our program is very intentional. And I think that that's something that doesn't often get spoken about. You know, when folks are looking at programs, one of the differentiators is what is the on-campus experience going to be? And if you look at schools, top 20 schools, and the size of the programs for most of these schools, you'll see them, some of them with intakes of 1,000 students at a time. And we believe that within our ecosystem, what makes the most sense is for students to be able to share space with others and to get to know people, to truly get to know the individuals in your class, and to get to know people from a variety of different disciplines and journeys. One thing is, if you are interested in going into consulting space, you don't necessarily want to be surrounded by only other people who are interested in consulting space. That makes up 80% of your class. You want to be surrounded by a variety of different people coming in and out of multiple spaces, understanding different perspectives from different regions of the globe, from different professional backgrounds, different educational backgrounds. And that is, it's really what you get with a program like ours. But I also want to plug into something that Kat said earlier, which was, we are connected to this amazing larger institution. Eric L. was nice enough to mention at the beginning where we sit in terms of rankings and reputation as a business school, but as a main campus. Berkeley is often ranked number one here in the US, number one as a public research institution. And I think that those identities are so important to this experience, a public institution with a focus on research and a focus on growth, where if you look across the 54 other grad programs that we interface with as part of our graduate program, our small program sitting in this large university, they're all ranked top 10 programs. The amount of people that you'll have the opportunity to interact with and to learn from. And what's not mentioned, or we haven't covered it yet, but any student coming to our program can take courses outside of our program. Usually we allow, 2 classes, 6 credits, but you could work with our registrar's office if you want a little bit more, and take classes in any of these other amazing schools. And so many of those students also have that same level of flexibility and are taking classes alongside our students as well. And so interfacing with someone at the Goldman School for Public Policy, or sitting down to talk business strategy and how it interfaces with new algorithms or generative AI is something that can happen with people from the data science places, or people coming out of the engineering schools or the I school. That level of interface is available on this campus. And so it is this beautiful juxtaposition of a small community, but access to an amazing large research institution.
Kat, did you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to just build off of something that Hilary actually mentioned, which when we talk about the culture, and I think this is part of something I do a lot, which is, I talk a lot about our kind of big flagship programming, our multi-million-dollar student investment funds that I was talking about earlier, the curriculum, the courses. But I think just touching on something that Eric and Hilary were discussing here about the program size, one of the things that I continually really enjoy and appreciate about being here at Haas is the students' sort of energy and entrepreneurial spirit a lot of times, with looking at what the school is offering and then really saying, well, what else could we be doing? What else should we be doing? And I think one of the examples that I would sort of bring to mind for that is, we had a student who, she's the vice president of sustainability in our MBA association. So, she's doing a lot of stuff already on campus. She partners a lot with my office, but she really noticed that one of the things that she felt was really missing was an opportunity for students who were passionate about climate change and sustainability to get together in a more informal way. And so with some support from our office, she has started hosting climate dinners, which are these monthly, small group dinners for MBA students from all different backgrounds, all different interest areas. You don't have to be incredibly knowledgeable about the topic. You just have to want to get together with 8 to 12 other MBA students over dinner and talk about these issues. And so that's been just a really great example, I think, both of one of our student leaders really identifying that this was something, that she felt the community needed. And then also, as we mentioned, the kind of, the cultural opportunity. It's not just what you're learning in the classroom, but it's also spreading out beyond the wider student experience.
I would love to build on what Kat said too, because I actually didn't realize that obviously that's new with the class of 2024, but it made me think my class and a lot of the alums that are working in climate or in sustainability and adjacent to climate, we kind of have a standing what we call climate soup, which is when we get together, talk about what's going on in the space and have soup on like a regular cadence. And so, to Kat's point, there's a lot going on outside of what the school is programming, where we're able to make those connections. And I think that's really important in climate and in sustainability, because when you think about this movement, it started as a grassroots movement. And I think that's where a lot of value is continuing to be created. It's, these incredibly nascent spaces like carbon removal, and trying to really accelerate the development of these markets so that we can have any chance at getting our planet back to a better place. And being able to make those connections with other Haasies has been huge, not just for my career, but in general for the space. I am able to go to conferences and know that I'm going to know 5 to 10 folks there who are doing completely different things, but to be able to connect those dots and share information and help get each other up to speed is huge. And, equally, like, I've had so many conversations with classmates who are saying, hey, I thought that I really wanted to be in tech, but this climate tech thing is really interesting to me. And can you help me understand what some of the market dynamics are in carbon removal? And I think to be able to share that information and have access to those resources is massive in such a nascent space.
Wow, I can't believe the conversations you guys will be having at those dinners. I'm sure they are much more powerful and meaningful than some conversations happening at a certain conference, which I won't mention right now, which leaves a lot to be decided. But that said, what should applicants expect from the admissions process? We know there have been some changes happening, and who would make a great applicant for Haas?
I think it's best if I take that question. So why don't I jump into it? So let's talk about your question seems to have two parts. One is about best applicant or applicant fit, which we can talk a little bit about. And the other is about the changes we've made in our evaluative process. So I'd love to start there. We as an institution recognize that technology is not standing still. Students prospective students out in the universe have different understandings of how they engage with technologies. Let's talk specifically about the ability to record short-form video with any mobile device, which is in almost any person's hand. The ability to leverage tools like ChatGPT and Bard and other generative AI tools that folks are using to help craft their business communications and their skills. Ultimately, the genie's out of the box with a lot of these tools, and we've got to adapt our own evaluative process to meet people where they are. Now, take into account that we're also in a space where some of the external players in this space, standardized test takers, are changing the structure of their tests. Both the GMAT and the GRE have removed the written sections. So we're in a space that's constantly evolving, and we ourselves have to evolve. But we still have a core philosophy of which students will be successful students in our program. What competencies we're looking for has not changed. What components, what values that we're seeking in candidates has not changed. We've just come up with different ways of bringing that information forward. So I talked a lot about big picture. Let's talk about specific narrow components. Within our application process, we've got several changes. The first is we have added a video introduction. Now, the video introduction within our application process is going to be a very hopefully low bar of entry for any person who wants to pursue an application with us. It is a recording. I think the max number of minutes is 2 minutes. We're advising people somewhere around 90 seconds. And we framed it very specifically. This is a video introduction. And we've given it some context. This is a video introduction. We'd love to know who you are, a little bit about you. And we've got these 4 defining leadership principles, which Kat and Hilary have mentioned before. They are part of how we talk about the program. They're part of the experience of the program. So we're going to invite any candidate who is interested in the program, take a few minutes, take a look at these 4 defining leadership principles. If you find that they spark something in you, you have an interpretation, you have a reaction to them. It doesn't have to be this is the way in which I question the status quo, or these are the 2 times the last week that I demonstrated confidence with that attitude. But what speaks to you when you see these? What draws your attention? And that's what we're looking for. That's what we're asking for in that part of the application. What we're not evaluating is your spoken language competency. Now, we understand that we are a global program. We have been a global program for many, many years. The community on our campus right now is somewhere between 30 and 40% international, and it has been for a significant period of time. And so this is not a place where we are going to evaluate your language skills. This is a place where we're going to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourselves. And for full disclosure, a place where we hope that ChatGPT isn't telling me a little bit about you. Right? This is you speaking to us directly. If you're reading from a pre-described script, you're likely not going to be delivering the same type of message. The next thing that we did is we took a look at the essays that we have on offer. And if I'm going long, somebody flag me. This is
well, Eric. I do want to ask you,
Eric,
if you don't mind, this video intro that you just mentioned, is that a point at which people could be potentially eliminated from continuing on to the next part of the process?
In terms of our evaluation, or in terms of completing the application?
Yeah, like, so very often you submit an application which includes essays, resume, references, and so forth, and there's a filtering process and people are shortlisted for an interview. I know of at least one school where students, or applicants rather, have the right to complete everything, including the interview, before there's any kind of elimination. So you mentioned this video intro, and the question was, is this a point at which people are filtered, applicants are filtered, and there could be a yes or no to continue on with the application or not?
Okay, great question. So we're asking people to complete the video introduction as part of the application before they hit submit. So everyone has the opportunity to do it. And no part of our application is a filtering component. No one component stops a candidate from moving forward or not moving forward. Candidates can submit every different component of the application. We review the application holistically. Now, I'm very well aware that if you've heard from any other admissions person, you've heard the word holistic. It's a bit of a go-to word for us in the admissions universe. So I'm going to define it as we do it here. It might be differently than that definition elsewhere. But if you just stop at holistic, it's too vague a term. Nobody knows what this means. What it means within our ecosystem is that we're looking for a complete understanding of the candidate. We have several competencies that we're evaluating on. One of those competencies is academic rigor. One of those competencies is going to be how you show up as a student, or the evidence within your application as to how you're going to contribute to this community. One of those competencies is about your career goals in terms of how they measure against the evidence in your experience, plus what our school has on offer. We're going to look throughout the application. That's the holistic part for these. I'll use a more defined example. Let's say we're looking for the particular competency of academic readiness. And we know that we've got the following core classes. It's finance, it's accounting, it's components that involve data analysis. And we want to make sure that every student has some level of exposure to that. We will look at your undergraduate experience, but not everyone has completed an undergraduate experience journey that includes this level of exposure. So we'll look at any graduate experience that you may have had, any short courses that are graded that you may have taken. We'll look at your professional environment. Do you do this work as part of your professional environment, even if you never did it during your undergraduate? And yes, we'll look at the standardized testing to see what that tells us. But we're looking for evidence to match the competency, and that evidence can show up anywhere in the application. It does not have to be in one area or another. And so back to your question, Eric, we're going to look at the submission for video introduction. The competencies that we've associated with it have a lot more to do with critical thinking, the ways in which you engage with our defining leadership principles, an understanding of how you're going to show up on our campus as a student. But that is only one component. We'll also have essays that will do the same. We'll also have other aspects that will also give us evidence towards that competency. Does that answer the question as asked?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome.
I want to jump in here because you said the magic word for me, which was standardized testing. That's sort of my lane, and it's a really big topic these days because, as you mentioned, the tests are all changing and they're reflecting the needs of the schools more, right? They're just refining as they go along. So I am curious. You do accept the GMAT, I would assume the GMAT, both versions, and the GRE, and maybe the TOEFL. but what's really your take on these tests and the scores, and how important are the scores for an applicant?
Sure. So hot take, let's go ahead and throw it out there. The old GMAT format, go to any campus, any school's website and take a look at their average GMAT score. And it'll show up somewhere like a 726 or a 748. Those aren't even numbers that you can achieve on the test. How about that? You can't get a 726. You can get a 720, you can get a 730. The number is to some degree meaningless. What we're interested in is how did you do on this component of the standardized test? And we're going to look at the percentile ranking as part of that, but we recognize the percentile ranking is associated with the sitting of the test. We recognize that the percentile ranking for the new GRE, which just, it's new, but it's using the same scoring model. So it's new, but it's not new. And that's confusing for a lot of people. The percentile ranking has changed. Obviously, it's a new format. It's a new test. It's only had several sittings. It'll equalize over time. We recognize that the GMAT focus operates on a different scale, that the concordance tables that GMAT is issued have the scaling a little confused. You can be at one level or another level when it comes to raw scores, and the matching is not exactly the same. So it's, I guess, a high version or a low version of the other score. So how do we interpret that data? Because again, we only are going to receive what's being sent our way. We encourage people to set every test sitting they've ever taken, whether they've taken multiple test sittings, because that tells us stories of growth, resilience, recommitment. We will look at the scores based on the candidates in the pool at the time, as well as historicals, although there is no historicals for the GMAT focus. Don't let anyone tell you that there's a concordance table and we'll just do it. It's a different test. It's different components. We'll look at the GRE, but once again, these are only going to be a small part of the overall picture. What you see on schools' websites, I encourage everyone to look at a median, look at an average score, and then throw that right in the trash. Look at the range. The range is much more reflective of who's in that community. Every time I've met somebody who's pointed to a median and said, that's my target, to remind them half the class is below the median. That's what a median is. And that's not the sole filter. That won't much to, so Eric L asked the question earlier, are there parts in our evaluative process where a specific application component will divert the candidate? And that's simply not the way that we operate here. We're looking at the entire candidate's experience. We're going to look for the evidence. The evidence has to be there. It does. It's a rigorous program. We do require that evidence to be there, but it can be anywhere within the application.
What about the other tests, like the executive assessment, or do you ever get students that use like an MCAT or an LSAT to apply?
So we don't offer test waivers or flexibilities for other test sittings. As far as I'm aware, there is no data to suggest that a strong performance on the LSAT, on the MCAT, on any number of these other tests is reflective of how a student may perform in the program. I don't believe that any of my peer institutions are using those tests as evaluative tools. They do use them as waiver tools, but we don't offer that type of waiver.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for all that, Eric. And so pivoting out of admissions, let's talk academics for a moment. We all know that Berkeley has some fantastic professors. In fact, you had 2 Nobel laureates. Faculty are at the heart of any degree, but who are some of your star professors these days? And what are they working on? What makes them so great?
So Eric, if it's okay, I'd love to maybe name one and then maybe invite Kat and Hilary. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but as a favorite professor of yours, I think we might get some diversity of opinion here. The person that I think I'd love to bring forward, there's a number of people here, but there's a particular faculty by the name of Don Moore, who does a lot of work on confidence and on exploring the confidence of individuals and how false confidence leads to poor decision-making, how you can use data to help reinforce some of those decisions. He also teaches in leading people. He's management of organizations faculty. And I, not too long ago, did a presentation with him, which is still on LinkedIn. If anyone's watching on LinkedIn and wants to go find that one. Don and I had a really great opportunity to talk about that, about his work. One of my favorites here, a longtime member of our community. Kat or Hilary?
Good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about professors. Obviously, I am a huge advocate of the faculty at Haas who I see as sustainability champions. And one of the things that's incredible here is that we actually have a number of them. So there's, several faculty that I could choose to highlight. I might kind of go with two that come to mind immediately. One of them is Professor Adair Morse. So she is a longtime finance faculty member here at Haas, and she's been for the last 2 years actually working at the Treasury. So she was tapped by President Biden, along with another one of our professors, Catherine Wolfram, to go and work at the Treasury when he took office. But she's now come back to Haas and has been really the leading faculty member in establishing our sustainable finance and impact investing curriculum here at Haas. So she has led the creation of 2 of our student investment funds. She's just an incredible champion and supporter for our students who are interested in pivoting into climate investment, as I mentioned, sustainable public markets investing, ESG investing, really supporting students who may not have a background in that to understand how they can move into this incredible growing career opportunity, industry that is just exploding at the moment. And so she's really an innovative professor, and her style of teaching and the connection that she has with her students. Another professor that I'd love to highlight is Professor Panos Patatoukas, who is an accounting professor here at Haas, really focusing on ESG disclosure and how that's impacting companies and investors in his research, but then has also partnered with another professor here at Haas to launch a new course called Corporate Sustainability Measuring and Reporting. So when we recently did some polling of companies and key skills that they need MBA graduates to have, and people who are interested in working in this field to have, an understanding of new corporate reporting requirements that are coming out from the SEC and other European regulators, ranked incredibly highly. And so we're really excited to have 2 of our leading faculty members teaching that course now here at Haas.
Thanks.
I could go on, but I'll hand it over to Hilary.
I'm sure you could. Anyone to add, Hilary?
Yeah. Well, I think first I just want to call out, so you might have seen the last, faculty flashing across, and you see how extensive these titles are. On the last one, this is someone who's in accounting, but there was also an association with the Center for Equity, Gender, and Leadership. And what I want to plug is big plus on Don Moore, who is actually our faculty advisor for our Race Inclusion Initiative project that we did during my time at Haas. So what I want to say is, I think what's really excellent about this faculty is that they have the same kind of authenticity and commitment to these defining leadership principles that Haas is recruiting for in the MBA candidates. And they're exemplifying that in everything that they do. I think it also just means that the teaching experience and learning experience that you're having is not necessarily standard and is really unique in a lot of ways. So, comes to mind for me specifically with some of my sustainability courses that I took. I think my first year I took a class called Energy and Environmental Markets with Lucas Davis, who has received awards for his teaching, and just the approach and the excitement and the passion that he brings to the classroom, but also just some of the interesting kind of structure of learning that we did. Part of that class was putting together teams and running this kind of essentially exercise where we were in environmental markets making different choices about what prices to charge in energy, and it was just a really cool kind of interesting exercise and brought a lot of non-sustainability folks into the classroom because there was such kind of buzz on campus about Lucas and his teaching style. Equally, I took a course called Climate Change and Business Strategy with Andrew Isaacs, who, has this extensive background in aviology, worked for NASA and helped design one of the astronaut suits that was used on the moon. And this is not someone you'd expect necessarily to be a professor at a business school, but Drew has made this commitment because he understands that business schools are churning out the future leaders of tomorrow, to make sure that this story about climate change and the responsibility of business leaders is understood, and to kind of have this like massive impact by being able to teach this curriculum to, folks who, of course, like me, who will work in carbon removal, but also somebody who may end up being a business leader for an industrials company, or, for a consumer goods company. And so that was super impactful as well. Another kind of aspect, I think, of the faculty that I found like really helpful and engaging is that, a lot of times the faculty will be continuing to operate in industry. So one of the courses that I took that's part of Berkeley's applied innovation curriculum, which enables you to kind of take a course where you're doing projects with companies outside of the business school, is led by Debbie Crackler and Sasha Radovich. It's called Strategic and Sustainable Business Solutions. And so it gives you this opportunity to consult on sustainability projects with different corporates of various sizes. Sasha currently works for Amazon. And so to be able to get this like very real-time contextual knowledge about, what are businesses working on in sustainability right now, and also to like have this industry experience be a part of that exploration that you're doing in business school is so invaluable. I mean, for me, I wasn't sure, did I want to work in climate tech or did I want to work in corporate sustainability? And that course in particular really enabled me to explore that to the fullest potential. And I loved it so much, I actually ended up being the GSI, the grad student instructor for the course, essentially acting as a TA the next semester. And it was awesome to make those connections, which I still use in my career today.
Amazing. Very impressive. Super interesting. I also love kind of like following your journey, like hearing about it after, like what drew you to Berkeley first, and then how it shaped you afterwards by spending time on campus, being immersed in the culture there, the influence the professors had on you, and how it led you to where you are today. It's really ideal. That's great. Krithika, did you want to take away the next question about?
Yes, yeah. I was just like so excited to hear about this, and I'm sure this would also lead to a lot of opportunities post MBA. So I'm curious about what are the opportunities that are available for MBA grads at Haas. Maybe Kat, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I can give a sort of perspective from my corner of the world, and then maybe Eric and Hilary, you can add in a little bit more wider context. But I think one of the things that I see, as we undergo this economic transition that Eric was alluding to initially, with the economy and industry looking to tackle issues of sustainability and climate change, what we see is the careers that our students are coming to Haas to undertake are shifting. And so we still have incredible, support and opportunities for students who come to Haas who are interested in going to work in, potentially a more traditional industry like consulting and investment banking. These are spaces that we've obviously been supporting students in for a number of years. But I think what has made Haas really unique, and what I've seen grow a lot in the last few years, is that our career management team and the people that support students in their career aspirations, we're really set up, I would say now, to help students navigate this growing field of areas like climate tech that Hilary mentioned, sustainable finance, impact investing. These are careers that maybe don't have a typical MBA hiring cycle. They may be smaller, startups that are doing just-in-time hiring. We have many, many years of supporting students to enter that, through the technology field, through the startup culture that we have here in Silicon Valley. And so I really feel like Haas is incredibly well positioned to support students who are interested in going into this new generation of careers in, renewable energy startups, in climate tech, across a whole range of areas. And that's something that we've really, really been working on in the last year in particular, and couple of years, is, how do we support students to navigate this? How do we connect them with alumni that are working, as Hilary mentioned, across a whole range of industries and spaces? How do we make sure that we're building relationships with key companies that our students want to work at? And our career management group has just been an incredible sort of responsive, nimble, and highly innovative team in planning on how to do that, working with our students. So that's my perspective. Eric, I don't know if you have any thoughts that you want to add on that.
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying this. You all may have heard a term used in the past, OCI, on-campus interview. For a long time, it's language that career management offices have used to describe the times when industry will come to campus to recruit students. And they use that as a measure. Well, these companies come to campus, these companies don't come to campus. So look at us from a reputational standpoint. We're drawing all these major folks. Well, the pandemic broke the paradigm. On-campus interview no longer means on-campus interview, because sometimes those interviews are happening from Zoom, from remote, from virtual. And so our career office actually moved away from the language. OCI is not part of what we do here. What we do is Haas assisted search, career management group assisted search. And that shows up in a lot of different ways. By breaking the paradigm, it allowed us to think very, very differently. We'll still have consulting come to campus. We'll still have industry come to campus, whether it be CPG, whether it be finance, whether it be consulting, but we'll also have the support infrastructure in place to connect to some of these new industries that Kat has mentioned, to some of these new spaces, including the support infrastructure in place to plug into the community outside our door. And I think that's incredibly important. When you look at where we sit in the ecosystem, so close to innovation, whether that be innovation in tech, innovation in all different other business aspects, whether it be sort of big tech, which is having its sort of fluctuation of the moment, which is that runs on a cycle. We're back in that cycle, whether it be the small and nuanced tech companies, ones that are working in climate, ones that are working in AI, where there's a ton of investment going in. We have those connections and those abilities to support our students in that exploration. But Krithika, maybe the question that you asked involved percentages or overall. So just to give a snapshot of that. In terms of technology, it remains among the biggest sectors we have for our students. Again, it's an industry sector, a lot of different nuanced components of that. About 30% of our students are doing that. Consulting, another sector with a lot of different individual job functions and all the rest, whether they be big consulting firms, small niche firms that focus in specific areas, that makes up about 30% as well. And then financial services, CPG, and a number of other components. I say healthcare is a big chunk of what our students explore, although you may find that some of that healthcare is listed in tech because of the way in which that healthcare is delivered. So my advice for anybody who is doing a search, likely the audience for this podcast, to go beyond industry segments and look at actual employers and job functions. Because job function is what you're going to be doing, not industry. Look at those job functions, look at where folks are, use the resource of schools' career pages, but really, again, I know that we're streaming on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn already, a quick search of Berkeley Haas and your industry will tell you what our people are doing, the type of roles they have, the type of work that they're doing, how long it took them from grad to get to the C-suite. That type of information exists, and advise you to use that as part of your search.
One thing we haven't spoken about, we sort of touched on it, was the Berkeley, just Berkeley in general, which is such a dynamic, world-class city or town. I mean, it's kind of a cross between both. And I know, because I live so close to there, you've got Berkeley Rep, which is getting like these amazing New York experimental theater. You've got the slow food movement, California restaurants. So do you want to just talk a little bit like what when people come, where's the place that you tell them they have to go, or how are you connecting with the cultural side of Berkeley? Because it is such a vibrant, and then you're right next to San Francisco, right? So you've got these two world-class cities, different flavors, of course, but and then Silicon Valley, et cetera. But you want to talk a little bit about just the environment and how you have that access?
I'm happy to start, but Hilary, if you want to share as well. I'll just say from an admissions perspective, the things that we talk about are understanding that this is a region, and within this region we have access to, again, Silicon Valley, all that is on offer in San Francisco, but also an amazing environmental experience, whether you want to be hiking, biking, taking advantage of the bay, which is right here. Not only the food and culture scene here in Berkeley, but also in Oakland, which is right next to us. Again, different textures, different flavors, different experiences. As you mentioned, there's a wonderful theater scene here, a great food scene as well. I tend to lean into the environmental aspect and the ability to have a conversation that turns into a hike. And that'd be right from where I sit on campus, and that's a possibility. Hilary, I think you
campus
had
to Redwoods.
Yeah. I'll pile on there, Eric. I think there's definitely a culture of trips and social engagement and stuff like that in business school. And as I was kind of learning about the program and having conversations with folks who were at Haas, I really loved what our physical location in Berkeley enabled. There's typically an annual trip to Yosemite where almost the whole class goes and camps for a couple nights. There's a trip to do some skiing or spend time in the snow up in Tahoe. And it's very kind of, it's nice to access those aspects as well. I think as well, just being in Berkeley and, I think there's a course called Edible Education that Haas offers, that Alice Waters is a part of, who's of course from Chez Panisse and the slow food movement. So I think Haas does a really good job of engaging the local community as well.
Kat, you want to say anything about Berkeley?
I think Eric and Hilary have sort of covered the main points for yes, what I'm seeing. I think, as they both said, Berkeley benefits from being in this incredibly vibrant and diverse region that you can really access a whole host of different opportunities depending on what your interests are. And so that's been one of the great things, even for me, moving here for myself.
For me, even a trip to the Berkeley Bowl is often a place where I take people. It's just this kaleidoscopic grocery store experience. So I like to take people there. Just the mushroom row is just profound.
Guys, this has been very interesting, and thank you so much for sharing all these insights. We are kind of on the top of an hour right now, and we need to wrap it up. I just want to give an opportunity if any of you wanted to add anything about the alumni community, services that are offered for alumni, anything that any of the three you wanted to add before we close off today. Hilary, being a recent alum, maybe you have something to say to start us off.
Yeah, I was going to let Eric jump in, since I know there are some programmatic aspects of that, although you work on the admission side more so. But I think it wasn't something I think I knew I wanted to be in a program that had a substantial amount of alumni in various different areas that I felt like would be really helpful to engage. I think I've been surprised at how much it's meant to my career post MBA, just to come into spaces in a completely, I've pivoted industries, to come in and have, folks that I know I can leverage and ask questions of and connect with, and that it gives us this kind of point of connection has been huge. I think that happens in any industry, not just climate.
For sure.
So just to wrap up on the alumni side, from my perspective, the one thing that we often talk about is that you plug into a community that's both small and large. As I mentioned, that's a little bit of how it plays within the student experience. It also plays in the other way. So with over 46 active alumni chapters scattered all across the globe, with over 40,000 alums of the business school program, you've got an amazing network. But add on to that network the 500,000 alums from Berkeley writ large. And you've plugged into possibly one of the largest ecosystems of professionals at any level in any industry that I think you can find at a business school. I would put our alumni network up against any. You mentioned 2 Nobel laureates within the business school. That number certainly multiplies as you cross the entire campus. And so all of that is something that's available to our student communities, our alumni communities as well. So as a student, you're connected to those alums from day one. You're getting the experience of having those alums be part of our community, building those connections, potentially having them be in positions to support you in your career journey, as well as just your educational and learning journey. But the support goes in the other direction as well. We have, as part of our career management group, support for people who have graduated, who are into different career transitions. We had a number of students who were coming back to our alumni office for our career office for support in navigating the next career step, making that transition, or even in their own leadership, how to reinforce their leadership in terms of supporting teams through challenging times, through organizational pivots. So it happens in both directions. It's certainly very available, and it's a benefit to our entire community that our alum are coming back to take advantage of the resources here, because while they're here, they're also adding value to the community.
Value is exactly the word I was thinking of, without even getting into the idea of costs and scholarships and so forth. It sounds like you get a lot of value out of the MBA and the education at Berkeley anyway. Guys, I think we have to wrap it up there because we are a little over an hour, and we do try to keep it within that at MBA Waves. So thank you, all of our 3 guests, for joining us today. Super interesting. Pop the website on there if anyone wants to get more information about Berkeley and the MBA program itself at Haas. And there we go. But if you like this episode, be sure to give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to MBA Waves on our YouTube channel and for the upcoming schedule. As always, every Tuesday at mbawaves.com. See you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.